Welcome back to the Game Collection. I am SuperDerek, and this is Dark Cloud.
Dark Cloud is awesome. But what would you expect coming from level 5 during the era of the PlayStation 2? Everything they touched, it seemed, turned to gold. Long before Ni No Kuni, level 5 was turning heads with Dragon Quest VIII, Rogue Galaxy, and of course Dark Cloud. Dark Cloud was released for the PlayStation 2 shortly after the console's launch. It's an action RPG that dabbles in resource management and urban development. It's got many of the usual trappings of an action RPG post-Ocarina of Time, such as the enemy targeting system, charged attacks, thrown items, and weapons of different types, but it's the unexpected things that it brings to the table that help make it stand out from the pack. The game takes place after a massive attack on the civilizations of the world by the Dark Genie. Over the course of a single night, the world as it was known was essentially annihilated except for a handful of individuals that managed to somehow survive. But during this attack, a sage was at work saving the people of the world and their homes by sealing them in Atlas spheres and casting them into dangerous dungeons for safekeeping. This sage then decided to give our hero Tone the Atla-Malia stone, which is the only thing that can gather the contents of the Atla and restore them later.
And with that, our hero Tone is off to save the world, restoring towns and its people from nearby dungeons in order to track down and eventually fight the evil dark... Hold on, this sounds really familiar. When you arrive in an area that requires revival, there's usually a dungeon open, ready for you to go exploring. When you've defeated all of the monsters for that spawn point, it'll explode. Stepping on these will reveal hidden items, or release souls of trapped creatures, or it'll open the... Oh, that's right, it's essentially a spiritual successor to Soul Blazer. I knew there was a reason I liked this game.
Restoring the world is actually pretty fun. You're given a bird's eye view of the town area and given free rein to place homes, roads, trees, and ponds to your liking. But if you want to get a special reward from the townsfolk, you'll need to invest a little more time by setting up the town in a way that fulfills their requests. It can be a little time-consuming, but it's also entirely optional. Earlier, I also mentioned that the game dabbles in resource management. That's because while you're dungeon diving for treasure and Atla, you're going to have to constantly monitor your party's health, status, thirst level, and weapon hit points. Party health and status are pretty obvious. You lose all of your health, you almost die and return to the surface and lose half of your gold pieces. Status effects like poison rapidly decrease your health, and other status effects will prevent you from changing out your weapon or slow you down. Thirst level is a slowly decreasing gauge. When you run out of water, you start to rapidly decrease in health as well, so you need to bring along a lot of water. And lastly, weapon HP. If your weapon breaks, it's gone for good, so you'll need to bring repair powder along. It can be a lot to keep your eye on, and because the treasure is a bit sparse, budgeting money for supplies is almost always a concern. For me, though, the real draw of Dark Cloud is in the battling and leveling system. Your characters have different types of weapons. Some have melee and others have ranged weapons. If you want to use ranged attacks, you'll need to switch out between characters. Leveling in the game is also different from your typical RPG, because your characters don't exactly level up or gain experience points. Instead, your weapons gain experience points, and you can spend those experience points to level up and fuse stat-boosting attachments to your weapons. Once your weapon's stats hit a threshold, you can morph your weapon into its next stage for a massive stat bonus. The actual battle system in the game is fairly typical, but it's worth mentioning that the enemy targeting system is solid and will feel familiar to fans of newer Zelda titles. The story of Dark Cloud isn't really what's going to draw you into the game. For me, it was pretty much everything else that did it. The game makes some attempts to insert small town-based plots that can be interesting distractions, but these plots are really just devices used to move your character from cave to a jungle to a ghost ship, etc. The overarching plot of the game isn't all that engaging though, and it brings all of the action to a screeching halt at the last few minutes of the game with a slideshow that attempts to explain how the whole thing began. The story is interesting, but the fact that it's presented as a slideshow really makes this part of the game feel unfinished. Dark Cloud isn't exactly the prettiest game, but as a game that's released so early in the PS2's lifespan, that's kind of to be expected. It doesn't even compare with The Bouncer, which was released within a few weeks of Dark Cloud. But I guess that's also to be expected from a Squaresoft title. That said though, the game does a good job of representing an interesting and varied world. Little details can be seen throughout the game that shows that they really cared about the game, such as Tone's cloak getting whipped around by the wind. The dungeons within Dark Cloud are randomly generated though, and as a result, they suffer from being monotonous. Doors and keys are placed randomly as well, which results in quite a bit of running back and forth between already completed portions of the map. The music of Dark Cloud is a really nice point. It's ambient and really enhances the mood of the game perfectly, and it's never distracting. Town themes are cheerful and memorable, while dungeon themes encourage exploration. Dark Cloud was released exclusively for the PlayStation 2, and was later re-released on the PlayStation Network in 2012, but in Japan only. On the bright side though, you can still pick up a copy of Dark Cloud for only $10, and it's well worth it, despite the game's flaws.
The game feels like a labor of love. It's a really awesome game that had a lot of really great ideas. They didn't necessarily hit all of the ideas out of the ballpark as far as execution goes, but they found enough success that they were able to carry on and make more games. Level 5 went on to perfect those ideas and their execution in Dark Cloud 2, but we'll get back to that next time on the Game Collection.
What? You want some more? Okay, well, you could check out one of these videos. They're kinda cool. Oh, and since you're already clicking on stuff anyway, maybe you should click on this button. You know, since you're checking out my new videos anyway, right?